Let's have a look at the WeCreat VISION 20-watt laser cutter and engraver. If you've never heard of it before, it's a fully enclosed 20-watt blue diode laser machine that features hands-free autofocus as well as a camera to position your graphics onto your workpieces. It also has a very nice large viewing window on top, features some great LEDs to illuminate everything inside, and it also has a built-in fan to evacuate smoke and fumes, as well as accommodation for their air assist module. The software for this machine is pretty flexible and easy to use, and it even has the ability to create AI generated content, but for today we're going to be sticking to the basics of the software. Now normally my videos are quite long when doing these sorts of guides, but for this one we're going to take a little bit of a different approach, and I'm going to dedicate this video to the basic functions of this machine. We're going to run through a bunch of examples and I'll share with you guys my material settings. And of course, at the end, I'll tell you my thoughts on this machine. Now in a future video, we're going to be covering the rotary function as well as more complicated projects. So be sure to subscribe so you guys don't miss those videos. And before we get started, I just want to send a big thank you out to WeCreat for sending me the Vision. Obviously this video would not be possible without them. And if you guys are looking for anything that you've seen in this video, including a link to this product here, check the video description down below. Let's get started. We'll begin with the unboxing of the WeCreat VISION laser, and everything in the box seems to be very neatly packaged. And this is a good thing because based on the pictures I've seen, there's a very large viewing panel on the top of the machine. And this is obviously something we wouldn't want broken upon arrival. And as you're unpacking your machine, be very careful not to discard these pieces of foam that say laser bed inside. And once you carefully remove the machine from the box, we can next remove all of the protective plastic wrapping. There's always something particularly satisfying about removing this protective peel ply from a large panel. After removing all the packaging from the outside of the WeCreat VISION, my first impressions here are that it's a very attractive looking product. Now let's see what's on the inside. The lid of the machine just simply lifts upwards, and inside you'll find more foam. And on the underside of the lid, you'll find the positioning system camera, so be sure not to damage this during this unpacking process. After removing the first layer of foam, you'll be met with some laser test cards, as well as the instruction manual. The instruction manual is pretty well put together, but of course you're watching this video and we're going to be going way more in depth than the manual, so let's continue with this process. Under those three items, you'll find two more cardboard boxes nested in this foam. We'll get to those in a second. Let's just remove them and remove even more foam to expose the laser and the gantry. In one of the aforementioned accessory boxes, you'll find the air assist, so this includes the hose and the air assist module itself. And in addition to that, it looks like I was sent the rotary pack because I also have the rotary module. The rotary module looks like a nicely built all metal unit, so it should be rather robust. And in addition to the rotary module, you get the steady rest for supporting longer objects. In the second box, this is where you'll find all of the other bits and pieces, like this exhaust flange, the Wi-Fi antenna, some tools, a little tool kit, the USB cable that goes to your laptop or computer, a 3-inch flexible exhaust hose, the power supply and cable. And finally, hidden away in those pieces of packaging foam labeled laser bed inside, you'll find the laser bed grills, which we'll be installing in the machine shortly. Setup of the WeCreat VISION is very straightforward, and there's very little to do in terms of assembly. Looking at the back of the machine, we have several ports, one of them being the USB port, and this cable will go right to your computer or laptop. The power supply is next, and it'll plug directly into the DC input. To the left of that, we have the on-off switch, and to the left of that, we have the air assist power. This round connector is keyed, so you cannot put it in the wrong way. Simply insert it and then twist the round nut to secure it in place. The air assist hose can be attached to the air assist module, and it's just a matter of press fitting this adapter onto the module itself. Then we can unravel some of the hose and take the free end and press it into the port at the back of the machine. These are push to connect pneumatic fittings, so you can just push it in place and it'll hold. Next we have the Wi-Fi antenna adapter, and that's underneath of the exhaust port. This simply threads on, and you can bend the antenna upwards and move it off to the side. Then we can remove the lock nuts pre-installed onto these studs around the exhaust port, and from here we can install our 3-inch flange adapter. The 3-inch flange is compatible with the 3-inch hose, also provided in the accessory kit, and that would attach with the hose clamp. However, the included 3-inch hose is not all that long. From my experience, 4-inch hose is much more common, and so I'm going to be using this 3-inch to 4-inch flanged adapter that you can find on my website, embracemaking.com. Now we can use 4-inch dryer duct hose, which can be found in very long lengths, to route the exhaust outdoors or windows that might be farther away. Now finally we're ready to power the machine on, and the WeCreat Vision performs this very cool party trick where it expands upwards. The machine looks like it nearly doubles in height, so when you do this for the first time, do not place anything overhead that would obstruct it from moving all the way up. Inside of the machine looks neat and tidy in a very industrial way, but it is missing our laser bed. In such a tight space, it was difficult to get a shot of the grills being inserted, but they just sit down flat on the bottom of the bed. We'll be performing our first job together shortly, so I'll place a small piece of 3mm thick basswood on top of those grills. Next, you'll install the software from the WeCreat website, and there's nothing inherently unique about this experience. Once you're into the program, up at the top right hand corner of the screen, you'll want to click the icon of the little person and you'll need to create a new account. And once you've successfully created an account and logged in, there's a button at the top right hand corner of the screen that says New Project. We're going to click on that, and this is going to open this interface, and with our machine plugged in and turned on the right hand side drop down menu, you should see Creator on USB. I believe I had to click on this to get it to connect to the machine, and there should be a little green dot that says 20-watt blue laser. On the top left, you can click on Settings, and this is where we can find our Wi-Fi settings if you want to connect to the machine through Wi-Fi. If you scroll down, you'll find a button for firmware that says Upgrade Now, and this should be one of the first things that we do. It will take a few minutes, but the latest version of the firmware should be installed on the machine, and we're ready to go. We'll perform a simple wood engraving as our first sample job, and on the left hand side you'll find a button that says Upload, and this will allow you to select an image from your computer that we can engrave. In my case, I've selected this grayscale raster image, and it's a test image that I like to do on every single machine when I first get it. In the drop-down menu on the right-hand side, I've selected the material as 3mm thick basswood, and you can see here that it gives you some reference settings. Based on the image, it knows that we're going to engrave because this is a raster image, and I really like how WeCreat put a laser test card in the preview window at the bottom, showing you the various speed and power settings. For this first job, we'll leave the default settings as is, and I'm going to draw your attention to the button in the top right-hand corner that says Autofocus. Before we can start our job, you have to press this button here, and the machine will take over and automatically find your material and adjust the focal height of the laser. Having this process automated is very convenient because now you don't have to stick your arms inside of that enclosure and do it manually. Once the autofocus procedure is done, in the top right hand corner of the screen, there's the start button. Press that, send it to the machine, and then press the glowing button on the front of the WeCreat Vision to begin the job. And as you guys can see, it's very simple getting started with the WeCreat Vision. If you have this machine and you're following along with this video, you may only be about 15 minutes in before you can actually start engraving something, and that's pretty great. As the laser is running, you'll notice that there's no buildup of smoke inside of the enclosure, and that's because of the exhaust fan located at the back. The other thing you might notice is the air assist module humming away in the background, and that's because the WeCreat Vision also handles that automatically. There's no manual dial to control the pressure or flow, so I'm going to go ahead and assume the machine is taking care of that. Now looking at my first job here, it looks like the power setting was just too high. 100% is too much. There's too much charring and burning around those edges. However, from the time that I recorded this video to the time that I've edited this video, I have noticed that there's been a software update where a lot of these reference settings have been updated. In the latest version, at the time of editing this video, the power setting is at 55% and the speed is at 250 millimeters per second, but I find that still produces too light of an image. After some trial and error, I personally found that a power of 85% and a speed of 250 millimeters per second gives me this result here. This was the best range that I was able to achieve on this grayscale test. There's still a very small amount of charring, but I think it's about acceptable. The small text comes in clear and crisp. Now, if I were to try it again, I might try 80% at 250 millimeters per second. The next most common thing people try to do is cut through wood, so we'll cut through some of this 3mm thick basswood. To perform a cut, we would normally import a vector image. In this case, I've imported a raster image because I want to show you how we can get a vector path from this raster image. And so I've clicked on Edit Image, I've clicked on the magic brush, and now we'll just go around and click on all of the white space in that image, and it's going to automatically delete that for us. Now I'm left with transparency around my black logo, but we can still only engrave. Now, unless we click on the contours button, this will trace around all of the black portions of this image, of which we can now click on and drag away to separate from the contour, and then just press delete. And we're left with a vector contour. Now, when you click on the vector path on the right-hand side, you can see there are more options like engrave, fill engrave, and cut. The material was already preset to 3mm basswood from our last job, and we'll just click on Autofocus, and this is going to take the machine through the autofocusing process, and we'll be performing this cut through this scrap piece of basswood that I've already engraved on top of. Now, if you're new to laser cutting and engraving, performing through cuts through wood normally produces a lot of smoke and fumes. If you've never used an open frame laser cutter, you might not fully appreciate how nice it is to have a fully enclosed machine like this, which captures and evacuates all of those smoke and fumes for you. The final result is a really clean cut. I was actually really impressed that there was no burning or charring around any of these cuts, both on the top or the bottom, considering that we saw a little bit of that while we were engraving in the last chapter of this video. And in this case, I didn't have to make any changes to the reference settings, which were power at 100 and speed at 8mm per second. Another great use for a blue diode laser is marking coated aluminum, and I have these aluminum wallets here. This one is anodized black, and I purposely selected black because the black wallet on top of the black laser bed doesn't produce enough contrast. I think it's a little difficult to see, and so what I've done here is I've put it on top of one of my laser jigs. I sell these fixtures on my website, embracemaking.com. Normally I use these for positioning workpieces on other machines, but in this case I'm using it just to see the black wallet a little better. In the material settings, I'm going to scroll down and we'll find the coated aluminum. There should be one that says coated black. Now, based on my experience, these settings look a little off to me, and the speed looks a little bit high for engraving something with a lot of detail. So I went ahead and tried the settings for the blue coated aluminum, and these seemed a lot more reasonable. So we're going to be using these on a black wallet, and I can tell you that they'll turn out just fine. Don't be afraid to experiment and deviate away from any reference settings. You might find something that works better for you. So I've gone ahead and imported my image here, and you might notice that the QR code has been inverted, and that's because I'm going to be lasering this on a black wallet. So when we go to scan it, it should actually scan in correctly. And based on the laser card preview in the bottom right hand corner, I'm going to dial down the power to 45%. I'll leave the speed at 100mm per second. I'll click on autofocus, and then we can click on start and run this job. But before hitting send, don't forget in the preview window, you can pan and zoom to make sure your image is in the correct place. Now, if you have a WeCreat Vision and you've been following along with this video, and you find that some of your graphics that you place on your workpieces aren't ending up exactly where they're intended to be, there is some misalignment, then be sure to keep watching because I have a fix for you. But for now, let's have a look at how this wallet turned out, and I think it looks great. The QR code and text is clean and crisp. However, I noticed that the color is a little matted and dull, so I think that could be improved by actually dialing down the power a little bit more. Next time I might try 40% power at 100mm per second to try and get more of a silvery look on the engraved portion, but the QR code still works. If you're running a laser engraving business or an Etsy store, another popular item these days are these Slate coasters. Now, these can easily be processed with a blue diode laser, so let's see how it goes on the WeCreat Vision. So again, I've imported a raster image here, and on the right hand side in the material presets, somewhere near the middle, you'll find slate stone. Conveniently with this setting, you also get the preview card in the bottom right hand corner, and you may notice that there's not a lot of contrast in those speed and settings on that test card. Therefore, you're going to want to select a high contrast graphic. On this one that I've selected, you can see the word then is in black and the coffee cup is just a few shades lighter. This isn't going to work out too well for us, so I edited the image and I changed that word then to white. So now we have better contrast between the text and the coffee cup. Now, I personally don't do a lot of engraving on slate, so I'm going to go ahead and put my trust in the reference settings, and I'm going to leave them as is. And although I don't normally work with a lot of these slate coasters, I do have to say that they come out looking very sharp, and the other nice thing is that they don't seem to produce any smoke or fumes, so nothing will smell bad. I was really impressed how nicely that turned out, and you can see how the word then looks on the right hand side with the white text, and I went ahead and produced a second coaster with the text in black. that I first showed you guys, and you can see how that you can't see it at all. And even though I don't work with this material very regularly, it seems that my intuition about the contrast was correct. Next, we can have a look at marking polished stainless steel, and I have one of these dog tags here. And this is literally a dog tag, not a military tag, but it'll work just the same. And so I'm using the text tool in the software to create a text that I can now edit, move around, and shape to my liking. And on the right hand side, I've clicked Fill Engrave, so you can see that it's filled in the text, it's not just a vector profile. In the materials section, I'll scroll through to find 3mm stainless. And one thing to keep in mind here is that if you're performing an engrave and not a through cut, the material thickness called out in the material settings won't be so important to you. So if your dog tag or whatever it is that you're using is not actually 3mm thick, then you can still use that setting without issue. One thing we do have to watch out for though is when we have these very reflective materials, the autofocus may fail. To get around this, I just place a piece of white printer paper on top of my workpiece and then hit autofocus. You'll want to do this after you position your graphic because obviously that white piece of paper will block everything, and then you're going to want to remove that white piece of paper before you hit start. The paper is thin enough that it won't mess up the focus, and it's not reflective, so the sensor being used seems to like it a lot better. And if you're working with small parts like this, you may notice that I've put the dog tag on top of a piece of wood, and that's because it's small enough that it may fall through the grates on the regular laser bed. I ended up with a really nice marking on this stainless steel, and I wasn't able to scratch it off with my fingernail. And a cool thing to keep in mind with stainless is that if you go back and look at the laser test card, you can change the settings to get different colors. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that you may find there is some discrepancy between the intended position of your graphic and where it actually ends up on your part. And to check this, you can run a part and then don't remove it, do not touch it from the laser bed. Just immediately go back into the software and click the refresh button. And so I've done that here with this metal business card, and you can see that I even have it taped down to ensure it doesn't move from the air assist. And you'll notice that my graphic and then the lighter color underneath the engraved portion does not line up. There's a small offset in the y-axis, and it's enough that I definitely want to fix it. So I head on up to settings in the top left hand corner, and in settings you can click visual alignment calibration. And this pop-up here tells you that if the deviation is less than 2mm, then it does not recommend that you run this process, but it also tells you can revert back to factory settings at any time, so we might as well try it. The board I'm using is 16.5 by 11.75 inches, and it's about an 1/8 inch or 3mm thick. If you have a set of calipers, it will work best if you can accurately measure the thickness because it's going to want you to enter that information into the previous screen. After that, you can just select Start Calibration, the machine will take over, and about 1 or 2 minutes later, it will be complete. Nearly everything about the WeCreat Vision is automated, so it makes the calibration process really easy. To test the results, I reran the QR code graphic on the metal business card, and I did the same thing where at the end of the job, I did not move anything, I just clicked the refresh button, and this time when I went to zoom in on the graphic, you can see here that the intended location of the graphic almost perfectly coincides with the engraving underneath. There's still a very small offset in the x-axis, but it's nearly perfect. And after removing the card from the enclosure, you can now see the graphic is perfectly centered both up and down and left to right. When compared to the original purple business card, you can see that graphic was biased too far to the bottom. Therefore, the calibration definitely worked and was worth doing.
Overall, the WeCreat Vision has been working very well for me so far. The build quality looks great. It's definitely on par with other laser cutters and engravers in the same price range. One of my favorite features on this machine is the autofocus. You do have to get a little creative with it when you're using reflective materials, but I showed you guys the solution for that. Otherwise, it's just one less thing that you have to do manually, and I really enjoy that. I'd go out on a limb and say this is probably one of the easiest machines to just unbox and get started with. There's almost no assembly or setup required, and the software is pretty straightforward. Even all of the material reference settings in the software were pretty accurate for the most part, and I didn't have to change much in terms of those settings. The addition of the material test card in the software is also a really nice touch. This makes the machine very beginner friendly and not at all intimidating to use. Now I hope WeCreat continues to evolve the Vision in both the hardware and the software space, and if I could add one feature to the software, it would be a trace function. Now I did show you guys how to change a raster image into a vector image by using the edit feature where we can get rid of all the white space and then use the contour feature to trace that. but it would be nice to see them consolidate those two things into one single trace feature. And although I appreciate all of the automation built into this machine, one other feature that I might like to see is some sort of advanced or expert mode in the software where you can override some of those settings or parameters that the machine selects for you. For example, something like being able to manually control the power of the air assist to fine-tune things for more advanced users. And so that's it for this video. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos where we're going to be covering the rotary tool with the WeCreat VISION, as well as some more advanced projects. And I want to send one more big thank you out to WeCreat for sending me the Vision. Be sure to check the video description where you'll find the links to their website where you can find this thing. And if you guys enjoy these videos and you want to support my work, check out my website, embracemaking.com, where you'll find all sorts of laser upgrades and accessories. Thanks for watching.